In this episode of Common SENSimilla, we'll be chatting with Ashley Reynolds, co-founder of Elmore Mountain Therapeutics, a CBD company focused on providing their customers, both consumer and retailer, with high-end products made with CBD from Vermont-grown hemp. Ashley, my home skillet, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Hey, buddy. Pleasure. How are you?
I'm awesome. You definitely look like a pro because you got the whole thing behind you. Well, and yes, you, and also the setup behind you. You thought about this. I appreciate that. I barely thought about it. Here's mine.
You're one of the lucky ones too. That just sold out for like the third time in a row. So,
well, congratulations.
Yeah.
Congratulations. So I'm 40, I'm going to be 41 soon. And sometimes my brain thinks I'm, 20 or whatever. And I live on a lake here and my boat stalled out in the middle of the lake last weekend. I was just like taking it out. I was like, just let me, you got to take it out every so often. So I took it out and it stalled in the middle of the lake and I'm out there like turning it over, nothing. And finally I'm like, oh, I can still totally I can swim the boat in because I'm not 40. And I did. I swam the boat in and I screwed my shoulder up. Like I did it. I made it one piece, but like I screwed my shoulder up so bad. So for the whole, this whole week, the house has smelled very strongly of vetiver. Right? Is that what that I guess? But it's great. I've been working it into my shoulder as I tried to swim a boat in like an idiot.
At least you made it.
Thanks for making this product. It's great. It's easy to roll right onto my shoulder.
I love that segue. Yeah, you are so welcome. That is one of my favorites. I too am almost 40 and I have done similar things and being like, oh wow, thank God for CBD because I'm not 20 anymore.
I could still do this.
Totally.
You can't. Don't.
Yeah.
Can you do me a quick favor before we get into it? Some people listening might not understand Vermont. And for those watching, you saw me air quote, but for those listening, I just air quoted. What's the fuss about Vermont? Can you explain it to some people? Can you explain it to me?
God, in a nutshell, it's awesome. First of all, it's the most glorious, romantic, green, beautiful state on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And we're really proud of that. My husband and I are both native Vermonters, born and raised. He's I think 8th generation. So our children collectively are 9th generation Vermonters. Deep, rich heritage for, agriculture, resilience, I don't know, tenacity. It takes a lot to live here. It's not for us, we're regular people. We mow our lawn and shovel our driveways it's not easy living here, but like this time of year, it's amazing. And I feel like it's just a magical place. Yeah, super supportive for small business, liberal, all the things. Yeah, and that there's just such attention to quality and artisan and intention. We do things a little bit slower here. Our internet forces us to do things a lot slower here. And yeah, it's not just like a state of mind. Like it's more than that. It runs so deep through all of us that I think those that move here wish they had grown up here, and those that don't live here wish they did.
Totally. I currently am not living in Vermont, which breaks my heart. Every morning I wake up. I'm not complaining about where I currently am. It's still New England. It's glorious. But I'm needless to say, I'm not in Vermont right now. And all of those things that you just hit on, while they sound like a quintessential description that any hometown person might describe about their state, they're absolutely true. And it's like you don't know what you got till it's gone sort of thing. Like now that I'm outside of Vermont, there's so many things that I like. And people think about Vermont like it's farmy and rural and all, and that's for
Mhm.
sure true. But there's so much in, that enriches the people who live there, like to their core, to their soul, if you want,
Mm.
so like being out of Vermont, and it's for sure entrepreneurial support, like the pandemic has slowed that, kind of uh, neatly, tightly knit community of just support group of business people doing totally different things or whatever, but connecting, be it through the Vermont, the Vermont Women Entrepreneur Group, or um,
Mhm.
being able to go out to lunch with, like, some CEO, some other company, any of these things. The pandemic slowed it all down, but I don't have that here, like that
Mm.
community it doesn't really exist where I am right now. And it I'm sad about that. But what I really want to know about Vermont is, I want to go back to like the entrepreneurial aspect of it, which is,
Mhm.
even though you live in, some might say, the middle of nowhere, you have this business that is now grown into some, national,
Mhm.
you're shipping products all over the country, um, with your, from your little cottage in, Elmore, Vermont.
Mhm.
How does being a Vermont, of Vermont, impact the role of how you shape the company? I know that was a
Well,
mouthful.
yeah, I mean, when we started the company in sort of the late 2016, officially started the company in May of 2017. Um, at that time, like, there really wasn't any like hemp. There was not a thriving market happening like there is now. And we were sourcing our products from Colorado for a
Right.
multitude of reasons. But that was not like my dream of having a Vermont brand that sources from Colorado. That's just what was available at the time. But very quickly after we developed our brand and started getting retail space, that there was this huge market of growers that was happening simultaneously. And they were saying, we know how to do the growing, you know how to do the branding and marketing. Let's merge these two. And so very quickly, I think it was like less than 9 months after we started the business, we were able to make the transition to a fully Vermont product. And that was really, truly exciting, not only because the talent of growers that were here at that time, there was no beginners. First of all, it was, everybody knew exactly what to do in 2017. And so we really just kind of took a step back and was like, you know how to do your part, we'll do our part. What was really cool is there wasn't as much ego. So people were only growing like an acre at a time. It wasn't
Mm.
like, oh, I grew an acre last year, I'm going to grow 100 acres this year. Like, which unfortunately, I hate to joke about that because that totally happened and has totally bottomed out the market now here.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, being Vermonters, it was always really important to have a product that was from here. We really wanted to have our carrier oil eventually be sourced from Vermont. Hopefully, coconuts are never going to grow here. And so hemp seed oil was a natural inclination for us. And then, what you touched on first, having a small business, within like the first 3 months of starting my business, I ended up going to VCET, Vermont Center for Emerging Technologies. They were hosting their first female founder speaker series at Hotel Vermont.
Yep.
And so it sells out almost immediately because there was obviously a lot of buzz happening about women entrepreneurs in Vermont. There was a lot of shift just in general of where people were at with their careers and wanting to really take that next step and become their own bosses. And who is the first person I listened to as like an entrepreneurial sort of, goddess, if you will, was Donna Carpenter.
Hmm.
And so if you don't know who Donna Carpenter is, she is the wife of Jake of Burton Snowboards. And
Yep.
she was up on this panel with her entire team talking about how to empower women, and not only how to empower women, but like never losing sight of that. And that if you create a business from the ground up with your own blood, sweat, and tears, that you really can put your own personality and spin into it. And the more success you get or the bigger you become, like, you don't have to compromise those morals. So that was huge for me because at that time I was like the only woman brand in Vermont. and was outwardly really being rah-rah about supporting women in the cannabis space. And that put a lot of wind in my sail to be like, I'm doing what I want to do, and this is the right move for me. Because a lot of people were like, well, you're alienating half the population. Do you think that's a really good business move? And I felt like it was at the time.
Well, I don't want to get too ahead.
Felt.
I don't want to get too ahead of things, but like that early, you know, that sort of attitude coming into starting your company resulted in, you know, tons of partnerships for you that helped grow your company.
Totally.
You know, empowering other women trying to start their companies. So we'll get to that though. Your children played an integral role in the inception of the company. But I'm interested in the time before kids. What were you doing? Were you entrepreneurial?
No, I was, well, it's hard because like I was a dental hygienist, which has a lot of autonomy in and of itself. And for me personally, even though I practiced for almost 15 years, like it never really like fit, you know, like it served a purpose for me. I learned a lot. I really enjoyed dispelling fears of dentistry. And I also really enjoyed promoting wellness and prevention and really getting a sense of how to connect with people to comply. And like, if you want to think about that in terms of like the cannabis industry, it really is like a sidestep. All I do every day, all day is demystify fear. I break down stigma. I teach people about wellness, and I show them how to prevent ailments, like 100% of what I was doing in the last 15 years. So even though dentistry didn't really fit me specifically, I knew there was something more for me. And then I have a rich background. I have grandparents who own businesses, several businesses here in Stowe, and like this sort of spirit in my family of, you know, being creative. Everyone around me is like a musician or some kind of artist. And so I was kind of felt so weird because my job title was like the only one I knew in my family that was like a 2-word job description. Like you say it and they like know exactly what you do. So I was kind of the weirdo, but no, I definitely was not of an entrepreneurial mind. So I feel like, you know, the whole, my kids, my postpartum experience, the like what you call like hearing the call to start a business. Yeah, I mean, it was all, you know, if you guys are spiritual or not, but like it was Gaia that was like, this is the move for you. I mean, it's not like I was new in my career. Like I left my career of almost 15 years. My husband left his career as a civil engineer, medical insurance, retirement. We gave up all of that to pursue this dream of Elmore Mountain Therapeutics. And like, you know, our family thought we were crazy because we had these 2 little kids and a mortgage and, you know, retirement. Why give up all of that? But yeah, I guess I was forced to.
I love this. So this is exactly the meat of the you know, this podcast, which is like this projection from other people that you're insane, this risk, this fear of jumping into things, doing something which to non-entrepreneurs, people who aren't you, things that seem insane, right? I can totally empathize with that. And also the idea that Gaia, God, you know, the universe, you know, whoever is like eventually pushes you off the cliff or pulls the rug out from underneath you. You know what I mean? Like, you know, these decisions are ultimately made for you. But the important thing is like realizing, like hearing that calling. I kind of want to know about that because Ashley, we've known each other for a long time. Full disclosure, Elmore Mountain's a client of CannaPlanners. You know, we do stuff together. So you probably already know this, but I'm a total dummy. So I don't know. I don't know what postpartum depression is. I don't know. You know, I can empathize with depression, certainly. But so take me through this. So you guys have careers, you and your husband. So is Elmore, you know, is the idea of a CBD company like sort of talking to you as you're cleaning teeth?
So I went back to work 3 months after I had my second child. And yeah, I wasn't experiencing postpartum while I was on maternity leave. So it was kind of like go back to work, the regular stresses of life.
Everything was groovy.
Yeah, everything was cool until like 90 days after having that baby. And all of a sudden it was like
that baby.
I'm telling you, like my hormones went nuts. My endocannabinoid system went nuts. And I was what I know now, like plummeted into a deficient state for my endocannabinoid system. And so even though I'm running after a toddler and a newborn, I have no sleep. So I'm not sleeping at all, even though I'm so tired. I have no appetite, even though I am breastfeeding. So like you're supposed to be consuming tons of calories to support making lots of milk to sustain a human being. Yep. So no appetite. I couldn't sleep. I had this horrible pit in my stomach at all times. And I just like, as you can imagine, feeling those things, like I could not function. I couldn't focus. I couldn't bond. I couldn't really like nurture and love the way I wanted. I was conscious that something was wrong, but I'm a very like, just tough it out, suck it up. And like, I didn't really hear other women talking about this. In fact, like a lot of my friends are so maternal that I like felt so weird that I was like, I hate this. I don't like how I feel. I don't like that I'm up all night long, that my mind is racing all the time. Like I just couldn't be. I just couldn't be. And that's no way to live. And I was seriously considering using pharmaceuticals because that's how desperate I was. And then being in Vermont and being a previous cannabis consumer prior to having children, I was like, okay, well, there's got to be some alternative here. There has to be. And so I had some friends that were out in California working for Herba Buena, who I love that company. And they gave me
that's the matcha company, right?
Herba Buena. No, back then it was like alcohol-based cannabis tinctures, like 1-to-1s. And come to find out, the woman who started that's actually from Vermont, which like super weird. But anywho, so friend of mine was working for her, sent me a 1-to-1, and like I took one dose and was like, okay, I feel a little bit better. But then I went to work and I was feeling really triggered. So all those symptoms I just talked about, and I took 3 doses. And then I was, of course, high at work, which at that time, THC just made my anxiety like way, way worse. So that was not the effect I was looking for, And then, fast forward, I had a patient who had anxiety in his chart and no medications. And I was like, Joe, what are you taking? What are you doing? And he was like, I take CBD. Like, it was like, no big deal. And like back in 2016, like all of us, it's hard to believe that like we lived in a world that we didn't know what CBD was, isn't it? But he told me about CBD, told me about quality assurance, which like I knew as a Vermonter, like, yes, you should know where your food and your strawberries and, not spraying pesticides. I knew all of that, but I never adapted that to cannabis. Like I always knew who I was getting my weed from. And so so just never like, I trusted the person who was giving me weed. So I never ever questioned how it was being grown. I never ever questioned how it was being processed. And so he really
I never even thought about it until CBD, until like, I'm inundated with COAs, certificates of analysis and test reports, all this stuff. I'm like, wow, I've been a cannabis consumer for, ever. And I've never once thought about this.
No, never. But if you're like using CBD like I was and really using it to like as a medical, treatment versus recreationally, like I was really treating it like it needed to be a clean medicine. I was also going to be continuing to breastfeed. So I was like, and I may have continued to have more children. So I was like, I don't want to be on something that I'm going to be dependent on. And I don't want to be on something that if I want to get pregnant again and go off of it, that like my life just ends because then all of these symptoms come back again. And I mean, this rest of the story kind of writes itself. If I ordered some in the middle of the night.
I don't think so. So like, hold on. Cause it doesn't to me. Cause so like, here's like, you're saying a lot, but here's what I'm hearing is You had a career for a long time. You had a couple of kids. It's the American dream, right? You're on the path of, to momhood. Then all of a sudden the bottom falls out, sort of, but you're trying to cope just by sort of trudging through it. So here's where it doesn't write itself, because like, I've for sure dealt with anxiety in my life. I've dealt with depression in my life. What doesn't write itself to me, and we're not, we have it's different. It's the same but different. You have postpartum depression. For me, it's not that, but something different. But the feelings are similar. To me, those feelings are dread, it's perilousness, it's fear, it's like hopelessness, those sorts of things. There's not an ounce of me that when I think back to those times in my life where I'm like, well, let's start a company. It's the exact opposite of that.
Yeah,
it's the exact opposite of that. So here's this is what I'm curious. So you're basically, Joe comes into the office and is like, CBD, Ashley, check it out, bud. And you have no idea what it is. So I assume you then begin to do a little bit of due diligence. You kind of get into it.
If you don't know me, I'm a total nerd. I love science. I love reading about articles. I love everything having to do with ideology. I mean, almost probably too much with this past year. I probably was one of those weirdos, but no, I'm a real freak when it comes to the science behind why something works, or like the ideology of things, and the pharmacology of things. But here's the trick, is that in 2016, there wasn't any, because we were still in the tail end of, keeping this information from us. So what little information I could find about CBD, I certainly had to bring my scientific brain. I mean, being in dentistry, you read through so many medical journals, you look for bias, you make sure that, they're ethically written and studied journals. So I had that same mindset to cannabis, and really literally made the like pluses and minuses list of like, we don't know that this is safe for breastfeeding mothers, but I don't want to feel like this anymore. It comes from a plant. I don't know if that plant is clean or not, but if it is clean, we can use it like we would use any other dietary supplement. And back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And, like a lot of people who buy their first bottle of CBD, it was like 2:00 in the morning of me combing through literally testimonials. Again, back then, like we weren't as like slapped on the wrist if we had them on the website, thank God, because I was reading people who were having the same experience as me. And I was like, well, if they're having this experience, maybe not postpartum, but like you said, anxiety and depression, and it's really significantly helping them, and these people are willing to put their necks out and be publicly talking about their testimonials, then it must be true. And honestly, like I really wanted it to be true. I really, really wanted to have a natural, holistic approach to how I was feeling. And so, like 2:00 in the morning, I ordered my first bottle, and took it, and felt like a lot of people feel their first time. Like I fell asleep. And like for somebody who hadn't slept in like, I don't know, leading up to having the baby, and then postpartum, like probably like 5 months of like really just like not sleeping. That was obviously pretty transformative. And then to like repeat it the next night, and repeat it the next night, and repeat it the next night. I mean, like after a week, obviously my husband was like, you're back. You're back. I mean, it was like pretty immediate, where I was like having an appetite and like was feeling like myself again. And I was like, okay, this is awesome. And, a lot of people ask me like, what made you, instead of just being a user, like become an advocate? And I think because most of my friends were also having babies, and they looked as terrible as I did at playgroup. And I knew that they weren't taking CBD because I had never heard of it, living in like a super pro cannabis state and never hearing about CBD until then. Right. I felt like I was comfortable talking about it to my girlfriends, who also same reaction. What the heck is CBD? And then like for a little period of time there, I was not like a rep for this CBD brand, but I was telling everybody to order from this company in Colorado, because I was like, this is going to change your life. And it did start to change other people's lives. But what really started to seep in, you know, after like a month or so, was really honestly how much demand there was. Like, instead of them purchasing it, I was buying more, because I was like, well, you know, hey, Susie, like, remember that thing we talked about? I'm going to be placing an order. Why don't I just buy you a couple bottles? Or like, maybe you're thinking about it, but like, just try it. Don't even have to buy, just try it. And like, you know, a few more months of doing that. And then it like really started to turn into like, I'm going to people's houses. And then I'm like, really like doing a lot more with like people I don't even know.
So you're not even like repping this company.
No,
you're just like buying their
no.
product like for your
Literally,
friends.
Totally. Because I felt so passionately about people taking it and finding relief. And that was a huge premise for really starting the company, of being like, I don't even care if people buy my product. I just want people knowing that it's available, like for all intents and purposes, like just know it's available. Cause like myself, you know, nobody knew what it was. Like, you know, what's now Sun Soil, but was Green Mountain CBD. Like, they had just started out. I had no idea that they were a company back then, because they weren't on retail shelves.
Right.
But like, then very quickly, you know, once I was like, okay, I want to start a CBD company, I actually met Alejandro and Jacob, because they're neighbors of mine. And like, so then that kind of like sparked a whole nother like, oh, okay, like this is really a thing. Here's this other company that's like doing it, you know, seed to shelf. Like, maybe there is something really here. And it's just so interesting how the world works, and certainly how Vermont works, that like literally within like a few weeks of starting the company, like I meet one of the largest other CBD brands in Vermont. Like,
yeah, I mean, this is kind of how we started this conversation, is like, that's the magic of Vermont. Aside from it being like a majestically beautiful place, it's you know, like you can be doing this at the time super niche weird thing,
yeah,
and you know, you find out, you know, the guy down the road is doing the same thing, right? And you can just
truly.
call
And
him
then
up and
not,
say like, hey.
yeah. And then not too long after that, you know, Joe and Rebecca called me up and was like, come on down to Stockbridge, you know, come on down
Yeah,
to Stockbridge and check us
Loose
out.
Farm.
And like, and yeah, and like, come
Yeah.
to find out, like, you hear what they're up to. And I saw their plants the first year that they were growing. And like, I remember vividly like being in their kitchen, and like the five of us at the time, and my kids and their kids, all just like being like, I can't believe this is happening. Like, this was this time where we were all about to like hit that button in the rocket to the moon. And like, you know,
That's funny, because I've been in that kitchen too, and you know, had very similar
I love her
conversations with,
fridge. I love Rebecca's fridge with the
with
cow.
both of them about, wow, this is a weird thing that we're all doing, you know. Obviously, you know, CannaPlanners doing something different, but you know, in the scene, like, it just seemed weird. Like, wow, you know, I've heard people talk about this my entire life, but have never felt it. Like, really being conscious of being part of like history, you know, being in history in the
Yeah.
making. And like, for the
Totally. I just
first
got
time, I'm like, oh
goosebumps.
my God,
Totally.
even though we're in this, like, I'm in, you know, a 200-year-old farmhouse in the middle of, you know, the hills of Vermont. Like, I know that we're in the middle of something special here. Like, we
Yeah.
got this. Like, this is going to be awesome.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Self-care is a huge motivator. I mean, for
Mhm.
sure, but it can usually be private, like just a private thing, like, you know, taking care of yourself, meditating, you know,
Mhm.
figuring out, you know, learning about CBD, making products for yourself, uh, usually non-entrepreneurial. When did that
Yeah.
shift?
Oof. Gosh. I know this is good, because I really want to not forget the details, you know, as time goes on. I think I think we were
Like,
able.
here's what I picture. You're, you know, Colin, it's after dinner. Colin's at the sink doing the dishes, and you're ordering your $10,000, you know, your 50th order of CBD, and Colin's like, wait a minute, we could do this. Or
See,
you had that,
I was
hey,
gonna say,
Colin,
I think
hey,
it's
Colin, wait a
interesting.
minute, we can do this.
I think that's interesting that you think it's Colin's idea. No,
No, I just mean you both like turn to each other. Wait a minute.
Yeah. I wish I could remember the exact moment. We definitely talk about like what I said. But I think it was like after a play date and like hearing from my girlfriends who were like, oh my God, this stuff is amazing. I've told 20 people about it already, that I came home and I was like, Colin, I think I want to do this. And he was like, well, what do you mean? I was like, I think I want to have my own CBD company. I want to source it from Vermont. And I was like, and I really just want to focus on women. And I remember him being in the like first sentence of like, I want to do this myself. And he was like, okay, yep, all right. But still was like, well, what the fuck are you talking about? How, like, you don't know anything about running a business. But then the part that really got him, and now it just seems crazy to say out loud because of the way of the world now. But when I was like, but I want it to be about women. And that's when he was like, yes, no one else is going to be thinking about women in the cannabis space. They're all going to be thinking about bongs and thongs. How much THC can we put in this product? How many flames can we put on the side of it? And that's the industry. That's going to be the industry. And I'm like, that has never been appealing to me. I've never enjoyed 420 culture. I've never enjoyed like Spencer's Gifts version of cannabis. Like none of that appealed to me, but I'm still like, I am me. I am consuming cannabis. I am a canna mom through and through. Like, where's that brand for me? And it didn't exist. And so that was the hole for me where I was like, there is going to be a robust cannabis market in Vermont. There's certainly going to be a robust CBD market happening now. If I don't advocate for women and be the voice for women in this state and hopefully beyond, like who's it going to be? Or is it going to be? And then luckily for me, I saw the very first Women Grow conference on YouTube. And so I saw Jane West speak about imposter syndrome. I saw AC Braddock talk about, how difficult it is for people to copy you if you create a unique culture. And I was like, well, I don't see anybody creating a culture for women. Like, that's what I want to do. And honestly, like, it really was all centered around education. Like, the fact that the brand has become what it is now is really just icing on the cake. Like, being able to be a spokesperson and an inspiration for people to see, like, life is hard. Motherhood is fucking hard. Like, I don't care who you are. Like, it's still hard. It's so hard. And having something like CBD to help you through the decades of life and hormone changes and healing and trauma. I mean, obviously we're here where we're at now in 2021 where it's everywhere, but like, holy cow, imagine the trajectory of like my mom or my grandmother if they had had something like this, like that's what I always come back to. Is like, if this was just available to us, like how far along we'd be as a society, how much less pain we'd all be in if we had it earlier. But I mean, it just really blew my mind. It continues to blow my mind, like the potential of reaching other moms and reaching other women and creating a space for them to feel like they belong, and that the feelings they feel of postpartum, of marriage, of raising children, like those are all normal feelings. These are normal things that we feel, yet we're force fed this, like, you got to look like you didn't have a baby 2 hours ago, even though you did. And you have to be in heels, and you have to be looking good, and you have to be, always loving your child and like being super, like, I don't know, like this weird mindset of like, you just have to enjoy and love every part of it. Like, that's such a lie. It's so hard. Who loves changing diapers? Who loves getting up 8 times in the middle of the night with your teething child? Like, no one. And yet we're vilified if we vocalize that it does suck. And, and so it's been this really beautiful, cathartic thing for me. Like, I need my customers and their stories as much as they need mine now, and it just continues to be this snowball of beautiful healing that is occurring with these women. And, I can't wait to see where we go from here. 5 years out, like, it's crazy. Can't believe it.
100%. It's funny, not funny, haha, but funny to hear you talk about kind of the I don't know, the demonization or whatever stigmatization we put on, you know, parenthood, right? Or whatever facade we need to put up for ourselves. So I'm not a parent, but whatever facade one needs to put up for themselves, you know, to, well, you know, just like you were saying, and so all of these things that are seemingly terrible about parenthood. There's plenty of great things, but like all of this, the opposite side of the coin, to so to say, is you know, has to be kept under wraps. And it seems like the thing that would be almost most talked about, you know, for me, like one of the biggest reasons for so far not becoming a parent is exactly those things. Like I hate
Right.
all of those things you just said, but
Right.
I know now that I hate those things. I already know I hate those things. The thought of then
Mm-hmm.
subjecting myself to it is like, why would you do that? You know,
Mm-hmm.
but no one talks about any of this,
Mm-mm.
like whether you
Mm-mm.
make the decision not to have children or when you do to then, you know, be supportive about it. The introduction of CBD into like that seems obvious and ironic at the same time.
Agreed. Yeah, agreed. But
Because both, you know, both things are just still kept under wrap, or you know, cannabis to some,
mhm,
you know, mostly uh
mhm.
kept in the dark, kept in the closet. Uh, you know, the the other side of the coin of being a parent, kept in the dark, kept in the closet. But these things all need to come out and play, baby. You know, like it all makes sense.
Yeah, no, it all does, and I have definitely people have asked me like, you know, what was it like to like tell your boss that you're starting a cannabis company? I mean, like, yeah, that happened. I had to tell my 3 dentist bosses that I'm like, yeah, this is happening. Just wanted to give you a
Hi.
heads up before, you know, you see me on the news and then, you know, you have questions. And so that's the other part too. Like, I did not choose this trajectory. I didn't choose this ride. Like, yes, I chose to be intentional about who I wanted to educate about CBD, but I could never have predicted that. I didn't even really have a choice as far as like really being a public figure. Like, I feel like it chose me, you know,
Yeah.
like the level and quickness of success that happened at that time, not
Do
only
you
for
feel, oh, hold on, well,
EMT.
hold on. Let me interrupt you real quick. Do you feel, because I want to get to like TED. I think the fear, I love talking about fear, right? So like in
Yeah,
this
you're like Brené
podcast, if there's,
Brown. I love it.
well, I love it. Like if there's one thing to be like, I hope anybody, that the 5 people listening to this podcast take away, you know, is that there are normal human emotions that humans feel that sometimes can get in the way of goals. And you have
Mhm.
to recognize them and either uh cope with them and remove them, or fucking barrel right through them, right, to achieve those goals, or you're just gonna be stagnant and sit where you are. The fear thing is so important to me because well, that exact reason, but like even the practicalness of it all, never mind the like, am I, you know, am I going to be able to, well, yeah, am I going to be able to pay my bills? Like those things are all important, you know, like
Yeah.
if I started a company, like how am I going to explain this to my boss? Like, how am I going to explain this to my parents? They're never going to get this, or this, you know, this idea seems so stupid. No one will ever, whatever it is, like whatever excuse it is, it's all fear based. And I love the idea of like this trajectory of like, uh, I don't know, a normal Vermont person, and then
Mm.
uh you know, a bottom, right, and
Mhm.
then some sort of cathartic moment that then opens the door and you see a light, right? So it's like a total 180, right? Did I do that right? Yes.
Yeah.
A total 180. And the fear part of it, it can either, it can motivate you one of 2 ways. It can either keep you where you are or help you realize that it's all bullshit and you just got to like keep on going, right?
Old fear cannot see new things. You guys probably hear me say that a million different times in my social media, and I believe it. I believe it so wholeheartedly. And I think the more that we achieve to become our higher selves, and really revel in the fear, and revel in the uncomfortable. I mean, owning a cannabis company, like it's all uncomfortable. It's just like barely starting to feel comfortable, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? Like, and I don't even want to say that, because as soon as you get comfortable, then your credit card processor gets shut down or whatever the fuck. Like, but you know what I mean? Like, you don't really like ever get to live in comfort if you're in cannabis. At least I don't feel that way. I don't ever. You and I talk about this all the time. Like, I don't know if I ever am going to feel like, oh, I made it. Okay, we did it. We did it. Like, like, no, it doesn't work that way. And I'm just lucky to have such an awesome group of colleagues like yourself to like help rally me around in the moments where I'm like, I can't do this anymore. Which you and I have totally had those conversations, obviously off camera or with my husband or, my employees, of being like, this is so hard and this is so scary. And no one's ever done this, what we're doing before. And like, there's not like, you can just like go and ask people, what do I do next?
Oh my God.
Like, that does not exist. That doesn't exist. And so
there's no book, but like, and this goes back to like the Vermont thing. And I'm not saying this is relegated to Vermont. I'm sure whoever's listening, wherever you live, this community exists. You have to, first of all, break out of your comfort zone, like remove the fear of like meeting strangers. I think I brought this up before, but like, it's a pretty well-known story about like, Steve Jobs going into the phone book and finding John Hewlett's phone number, of Hewlett Packard, and picked up the phone and was like, hey, can I come over and ask you something? And Steve Jobs is probably 14 at the time, and Hewlett Packard's still like a multi-billion-dollar company in the whatever, the 60s or whatever. But that stuff's still important. You're right. Like it is extra scary being in cannabis, right? There is always a monster under the bed. Payment processors, regulations, Delta 8, like whatever. Things are always evolving. And that's okay. Like that's the nature of, a nascent industry, and we've chosen to be in. But like the idea that that's just like practical fear. Like, oh, I'm going to face new challenges. That's any entrepreneur, right? But being able to like pick up that phone and call somebody else who's like, hey, how did you deal with, something similar? Have you ever dealt with this thing or whatever? It's hugely important. But you touched on like, you went to this Women Grow conference and the Imposter Syndrome and like, this is something that I constantly deal with, especially starting a podcast. It's like, oh my God. First of all, I'm like one of like 30 million people who started a podcast during the pandemic. Right? It's such like an ego stroke. It's not really like I'm not doing this for myself, but
I'm having fun. This is great.
Yeah, right. It's I kind of forgot where I was going there. See how good of a podcaster I am.
It's okay. That's okay.
The
Imposter syndrome.
Right. So the imposter syndrome, like I deal with this constantly. But as you said, like there's no book to read. There's no president of Cannabis USA that I could pick up the phone and be like, how did you deal with it?
Totally.
I want to know about going from cleaning teeth to like hearing about imposter syndrome to being on a TED Talk stage. Like, how does that happen? So what I was getting at when I interrupted you like 20 minutes ago was like, are you disembodied when you're doing these things? Like, are you Ashley Reynolds? Are you Ashley Reynolds when you're on a TED stage, or you're inspiring your team, or you're formulating new products or whatever? Or are you like Ashley Reynolds, CEO?
Oh gosh, probably in the beginning it would have been like way more egocentric and been like, I'm the boss, I'm the president, you got to do what I say. But now, because my life has just really become one, and I run my company with my husband and my life partner, my father of my children, that like I don't really get to just like be compartmentalized and be all these different personalities anymore. Like it's all just one. I mean, this past year of my children seeing their entrepreneurial mother, deal with thinking like this is the fucking end, and like crying and being super scared and not knowing what the future of my business was going to be. Like, I was terrified. We shut down, for crying out loud, completely shut down. And my children got to see me in that state. They got to see me be, I mean, they've seen me on the TED, and they've seen me on the news, and they've seen me, I try to explain, like, oh, I'm like Daniel Tiger, like mom's on TV. Like, they don't care. That doesn't matter to them. But what really has been kind of a neat thing over the last year, and lets me know, like, that this really all is working in harmony, is like, my kids, they're almost 5 and 7. They started their own company called Kids Company. And it's like making different things for kids and like teaching them about how to brush their teeth. And like, they did that because hopefully that means that they're not just like their play therapy, that they hate us for being entrepreneurs. But like, I truly believe that it's all been one. And I mean, you've known me long enough, Will, like, I don't know. I think there's probably like a turned on Ashley of like, when I'm in the zone and I'm nerding out about the endocannabinoid system, I'm getting real passionate about women's health and wellness. Like, yes, but I will say CBD has definitely kept me grounded. I definitely took one of Monarch and the Milkweed's evergreen buds right before I went on stage, which was like 70 milligrams of CBD. So like, for everyone who watches the TED,
and we'll link it in the description below.
I definitely was like super duper, my anandamide was crazy high for that, but I was present, so much so that like, there's a part of the TED where like the lights are so bright that you can't really see the audience. And like, I put my hand over my face because I wanted to see their eyes. I wanted to see, like, am I crazy for giving this talk? At the time was one of 20 in the whole world about cannabis. And I was really wanting to see, like, is this going to be this moment that like, I am going to really be putting myself out there and no one's going to get it? Like, talk about fear. I mean, honestly, like, I'd never spoken to a group of people that large. It was almost 500 people in the room, and actually it was 420, which is my lucky number. I know that sounds so cliche, but it is.
You are ahead.
But yeah, no, that was one of those experiences where like, I got off stage and it was like, I cannot believe I faced that fear. I cannot believe I did it, because when Ted called me and asked me to do it, I said no. Honestly, I said no, because I didn't at the time feel like I could be that vulnerable and put myself out there so much, which I already had. Like, obviously looking back at it, like I really had already taken the leap and put myself out there as being this canna mom, as being an advocate for the industry. But like, in my own mind, I still wasn't ready to be like out, like really out.
I totally know what you mean.
And yeah, I mean, so how did that happen? There was an article that was written about me in a teeny tiny magazine about what I was doing for cannabis and women. Somebody from TED read that and thought that there was something there. And so called.
They were right.
They were right. And like, TED's not something you can buy, at least not that I know of. And so it wasn't something I could just like pay my way into. Like, you have to be chosen to do that. And so said no. And then obviously a week or two later was like, you know what? I think I can do this. I think I can. And at the time too, simultaneously that is happening. And then my company is also in the process of like attempting to be acquired. So I'm like living this like weird life of like, I just quit my job. My company is going crazy. Now I'm giving a TED, which seems like totally off on another planet. And now here's Grassroots, now formerly Grassroots is now known as Curaleaf, trying to buy my company. I'm flying back and forth to Chicago. Like, it was a surreal time.
How was that experience? I mean, I didn't expect. What was that experience like? You weren't acquired.
No, I wasn't acquired. It was a really great learning experience, to be honest. Like, understanding what a giant room of super talented people from other industries who are like, all we need to do is X, Y, and Z, and we'll just build this new brand and you're going to be the face of that brand. Like, here's your check. I mean, who wouldn't want that? Right. But at the time, I still had so much, like, control issues, narcissistic issues, personal issues surrounded with my brand.
You had a vision. You had a vision.
Yeah. I just wasn't like in a place that you and I talk about this all the time. Like now my company is like the teenager that lives above the garage that I can check on sometimes. If they really are in trouble, they can come to me. But at that time, you know, I had built something that really meant something to me and really meant something to a lot of other people. Obviously, it meant something to other people enough that they wanted to buy it. Like that's a great thing to have happen. But for a multitude of reasons, like it just didn't align, you know, the way that I was hoping it to. I wanted to keep the name because I felt like there was so much that people recognized in the name. There was a lot of things that went on there, but ultimately, those are the types of people that are always going to be in this industry. Like I did learn so much in the fact that like trying to mix business with pleasure, or like be your brand, try to embody your brand and the brand is you, like is not a healthy way to be, right?
No.
And it doesn't allow your brand to grow and blossom and be the full potential if you are just constantly trying to squeeze it and make it into who you think it should be. That doesn't work.
It's often a major reason companies fail. I mean, it is because the company cannot grow beyond its founder. And
just can't get out of its own way. Yeah, totally. But what was neat about that is I came up with the idea for the TED that I gave. I wrote 6 different TEDs also, by the way. Like I love TED. Yes, it is meant for new innovative ideas, but cannabis was not something that they were feeling super cool about. And so 6 different iterations of that talk. Yeah, right. So 6 different iterations of that talk before I wrote the one that I wrote back home from Chicago about this one woman show. And I felt like if I created this like fictitious environment about me being the doctor and the patient, that like maybe I could skirt around people being like, you said that CBD does this. I mean, here's the other thing. Like I'm nervous about myself personally being put out there. Then on top of that, my brand is so new that I was like, what if I say something that's not the right thing? And then I just ruin my brand's reputation. Like there just felt like there's so much pressure at the time. But you know, luckily it landed, and like almost 6,000 people have watched it since I gave it. And it feels awesome. Like that's going to live like an infamy, you know? And who could ask for anything more than that? Like, it's pretty cool.
It's definitely awesome. It's cool that people are viewing it online still. And no, I mean, I've seen it a couple times. I remember when it came out and I was like, damn girl, like you fucking just did that. That's crazy.
I know. It's like people bring it up to me now. Like it seems like it was so long ago because it was 2018, but like no, people like just the other day I was at the beach and somebody was like, I was at that TED talk and that was insane. I'm like, I know.
Yeah. Well, I think the takeaway is like, maybe it's through a TED talk and that's certainly getting thrown into the fire, but like you got to step out of your comfort zone and do things that like, if 5 years ago, Ashley were to like be able to like talk to you, that she would be like, not even recognize you. You know what I mean? Like we're not the same person anymore. And it's such an important, I mean, it's all self-care. Like it goes back to like where this whole thing started for you. Self-care includes self-growth and growing and maturing, evolving into something that you weren't. And like, it's so important for entrepreneurs, or you're just going to be stuck. Like you got to get out of your own way. Like
it's so
realize what
true.
you don't know and throw yourself off a cliff.
It's so true. Well, and like year 5, you know, obviously pandemic pace was the pandemic pace. And honestly, for my family, like it really worked out for us. I homeschooled my kids. It was a big pause for the last 4 years, which were on hyper speed. We were traveling all the time. I was traveling with my kids. Luckily, they were young enough that I could pull them out of school and it was okay. But this last year, it was so magical for us as a family to like bond after this crazy thing that had just happened to our family. Because to put it in perspective, my husband and I got married, had a baby, and started a business all in the same year. Like that's insane in and of itself. And then it became what it became, which is also insane in and of itself. And then to have this past year to be like, okay, let's take a reset. And now there is so much temptation to travel all the time and to go to every conference and get right back where we were before the pandemic. But I find that for me personally, I find it to be very triggering because I don't want to be how I was before. I don't want to become, I don't think I'm going to become like what I was in the beginning of being this like very narcissistic individual and not realizing like my brand is me. And if I don't get that account, it's because I'm not good enough. Or if somebody says no to me, it's because they're saying no to me personally. Like, I don't feel that way anymore, you know, like, but I still
That's a huge step. I still sometimes feel that way.
but I feel very like a little unsteady about now, like things are really starting to ramp up again. And I'm like, I'm saying no a lot of the time. And at least I could say no for a little while because I wasn't vaccinated, but like now I'm fully vaccinated. And it's like, well, now what's my excuse? My excuse is really just that I have a family and I don't want to, you know, like that's not good for my family. So now I'm at this crossroads of like, okay, yes, the brand still needs me to do X, Y, and Z. I am just not willing to do that anymore because it's not healthy for me. So I really appreciate you bringing up the whole self-care element because I think people just think like it's sunshine and gumdrops all the time. And like, you're this brand and like you're everywhere and like, you must be happy and everything must be great for you. And it's like, well, that sometimes it is, but like, I still wrestle with how can I still live in harmony with my family and accomplish all the things that I want to accomplish. And like, it used to be for me like, oh, I'm sacrificing this for this, or, you know, if I become a mother, then that means I can't be a successful business person and vice versa, you know? And like this continuous pressure of a mother to feel like there's never really a place that I can just exist. I feel like it's bullshit. I fed myself that lie and called that the imposter syndrome. I blamed my shortcomings on like society, like, oh, society's just not giving me the opportunity, you know, but that's not true. You create your own opportunities, you create your own destiny. And sometimes that looks like no. Sometimes you say no, and it doesn't mean that your brand is going to end.
Exactly.
So that's been a real interesting kind of shift now.
Yeah, that's such a like, you do have to reach that moment though. Unfortunately, like, you know, I think at least, you know, there's periods where you don't have to say yes, but you're more compelled to say yes than you are no for many years in the beginning. But that moment when you're like, oh, wait a minute, like you look at the books or like you, whatever justification you have, you understand like, oh, I don't need to do this thing anymore. Or I don't need to take on this kind of client anymore. Or I don't need to do stuff for, I can charge more, you know, like whatever those things are that we're
I don't
holding,
need to
like,
check my sales every day. I don't need to look and see what my email analytics are. Like, you know, all those things that for me personally, maybe everyone else is way more woke than I am, but like I obsess over those things because I feel like those are all validating things for me. They're not healthy things. That's not a healthy validation, but it is a validation. But that's the whole evolution of this business is like CBD is not going away. Cannabis is not going away. And so I feel like now is the time for anybody who is either getting in or has been in for a while that like, you need to create boundaries. You need to create some no's around yourself or like, this is not sustainable. Like it's saying yes all the time is not sustainable. And I get it. I do. I really, really do. Like there's certain things that I'm like, I should be doing that. And I should be doing this. Expo East, you know, we should be going to Expo East. MJ BizCon, I should be going to MJ Biz. And it's like, but at what cost, right? My kids are going to be in school.
So much money. It's so much. Oh my God.
But no, I mean, it's an interesting evolution.
It's sort of like an emotional realization of scale. You're like, that's fun.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And it's a neat place to be.
We're creeping into an hour, which is totally fine with me, but I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I have just a couple more questions. You and I were sort of chatting about this the other day, and it led me to this question, which is, what's more important, being mission driven or focused on sales? And how do you balance the two? Now, obviously they're both super important, but I'm curious what's most important to you.
Well, I mean, I just ran into this. So I work with a network of spas. New England's tiny. The amount of 5-star resorts in New England is tiny. That is a demographic I go after because of our spa line and the gravitas of our brand quality. And I recently had an incident where a spa I've been working with for a really long time had their head massage therapist. She left, and now she's starting 2 other spas. One right in the same town as this other spa, and then another spa a few towns over. Now, the small business person mind and myself is saying, I can't turn away business. So this woman reaches out to me. She says, I want to have your products. I know them because of this other spa that I used to use, work at and use your products at. I want them in my spa. So, morally, my mission is this other spa is a woman-owned business, husband and wife. I've known them a really long time. I went to her and said, like, this is who's reaching out to me. And how do you feel about that? And in that email, letting her know, like, what it's like having a small business and owning your business. Like, turning away business right now is really not a good move, right? We're coming out of this pandemic. We all took such a hit last year. Like, I don't really have the option right now to say no to sales in a lot of ways. And she said, I totally understand where you're coming from. X, Y, and Z, I would prefer you not. And I said no to this other woman because I was like, this doesn't align with me. Maybe if this woman had given me her blessing, maybe I would have said yes. But like, that is the opposite of what I want to try to accomplish with collaboration. Some people say that they collaborate over competing, but really actually collaborating versus competing, like, that is reality versus what marketing tells you women are doing is 2 different things, first of all. And so that was one of those moments where I was like, shit, man, that could have been a really great account. It would have competed with this other spa, but that was the right thing to do for a multitude of reasons. And then, come to find out that then I asked this woman, if my current spa client, if I could service this other spa that was a few towns over. And she was like, yeah, great. And now we're working with that spa. And so that feels really good to me. Maybe one person wouldn't have even taken their, existing client into consideration and just would have been like, that's a sale, I'm doing it. But I just don't feel like that was the right thing to do. Or even now, like, it's getting tough out there. There's a lot of dead brand space on shelves right now. Like, there just is. And whether we wait for the retailers to get rid of it or not, like, there needs to be some dialogue happening here. And it's not a personal one, it's a business one. And so creating, these strategies around sales, because we know that our mission is economic development, is environmental sustainability, like keeping a brand on a shelf just for whatever reason, because they don't want to send it back to the brand that may or may not exist anymore because of the pandemic. Like, where are we at there? And so, I do think it's a tough wave to surf, but I feel like the decisions that I make as a business owner are ones that I don't want to regret. I don't like having that feeling of looking in the mirror and being like, I don't really like that decision you made, or I don't like that thing that you said to that person, or you could have been a little kinder, or maybe, maybe don't say that kind of stuff, even if it's your friend. Like, I don't like that feeling. I've never liked that feeling. I don't like mean girls. And I feel like that's something that has existed in me for a long time. And, I see brands do things all the time that I really question, and it makes me feel sick to my stomach. Like, when bad people get good success or good PR, I just don't like that. And so I don't ever want anybody to look at me or look at my brand and be like, yeah, it was a good brand, but she was an asshole. Like, I don't want to live like that. I don't want to live like that. And like, you can't live like that if you're trying to be a leader. You can't live like that if you're trying to inspire people. Like, it just doesn't work that way. Gandhi didn't get to where he was trying to get by being a dick. Like, that's just, and creating and taking money all the time. I could have my company could have been acquired, right? Totally. I could have said yes. I could have shut my mouth and said, nope, you guys are right. You know what you're doing. All the things I've just built for the last year and put my blood, sweat, and tears in. Yeah. You guys just take it and run it and do it. Yeah. Like, no, I was not going to do that.
It's about that fundamental shift, like in the beginning, what's right for your company, what's right for yourself, hopefully, but what's right for your company. And you sometimes have to wear the mask of CEO, but eventually that mask like seeps into your skin, and like, you are that person, right? The fake it till you make it. Like, you just, you have to stick up for yourself. You have to do what's right for the company. And in the beginning, like you think you know what it is, but eventually like, you know exactly what it is.
Yeah, I remember when we were trying to get investment and we pitched Alan Newman, and I remember him being like, so you only want to sell to women. What that's a horrible idea. And I was like, well, if you don't get it now, you're never going to get it. And like, obviously we didn't end up taking Alan's money, but like, that was like the first of many, many meetings that I've had where you're just like an alien in a room of men being like, well, I think you should do this. And you're like, well, I don't. And
Yep.
like, so we're not going to do that.
Yeah. In defense of men globally, we're mostly dumb. Yeah. Most of us don't know what we're talking about.
You're good. You're an ally. You're an ally, Will. And your team has been ridiculously supportive. Oh my gosh. I can't say enough good things about your team now. I know I tell you this and gush about it all the time, but like, they didn't know me before you knew me. And like some of the shenanigans that go on in our meetings, like I'm sure they're like, oh my God, this lady's out to lunch. But they embrace it. I love it. They really embrace it. And like, I feel like they've all really done such a great job to like embody not just my brand culture, but like all your clients' brand cultures. It's pretty cool to see.
It's cool because we have a spectrum of client, right? Or a business really. Like, and I guess it's just evolution, but like we have the, the companies that, um, and this isn't a criticism or it's not a detriment. It's just the way they choose to run their business, right? They come at us and they're at the, the early stage, and some of them just stay there. And then we have companies who come at us and they maybe have a full marketing team and they, it's more than one person. Maybe they've even been in business for a while. They're a little more established. They have their shit together, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
It happens, but very rarely do we get to watch a business go from one end of the spectrum to the other. And you have, and it's like one of those things that's been amazing to watch. We have our group of clients who have like kind of done that, and that's capitalism, right? Like that's the way it's supposed to work. Like if I'd be an idiot if I thought that, 100% of our clients are going to be, huge, they're all going to be insanely successful. I wish that were the case, but it never will be. But to see that sort of play out it's a beautiful thing. It really is. Now that I don't know when this is going to come out, but at this time of recording, Vermont is rocking around an 85% vaccination rate. People are starting to come back outside. Maybe there's an event happening here and there. Life is starting to come back to normal. Can I assume, you're in the production office? Are people coming back to work? Are you starting to like go back and do a post-pandemic operations?
Yes, where literally today was the first day that my formulator and I met like without masks on. So that was really beautiful. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of energy and potential happening right now, which is really unexpected. I really just continue to feel so grateful for literally every e-com order that comes in, every new client that sends me an email for a wholesale inquiry. Like I still am doing that, like unbelievable. I can't believe
that
they found me. Yeah. I'm so glad that I didn't have to bend my morals. I'm so glad that I didn't really have to change my business plan and model for how I want to be. And some of the products that we've had for like 3 years that literally have made no money, but I just felt like I really wanted to have in my product offerings, like the spa line, like that has been the slowest burn. That face serum has been the slowest burn ever. And now like it is finally getting its day in the sun, and like every order is ordering it. And like, thank goodness, like that was just one of those things where like for a long time, my colleagues or my coworkers were like, we got to kill the spa line. We got to kill the spa line. Like, what are we doing with this packaging? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And I was like, we just got to hold on. We just got to hold on.
People are going to want facials again. Yes! I swear, I know it.
Right? And like
That's funny.
the last like 12 new accounts that we have had, none of them I've pitched and they've all been spas. And like, how do you attribute that? You know what I mean? Like,
You
how,
got a thing.
a long time ago, I could have given up on the line, but I was like, nope, I feel like there's something here. Let's just keep, even if we sell, one body oil a month, like that still is one body oil.
Well,
But no,
congratulations. I'm glad to hear that. That those things are starting to happen. And you got to believe, when you got a lame duck, you usually know. But when you don't, when you got a home run, it might be a slow creep out of the park, but like, yeah,
yeah,
that's an important realization. I believe in this
yeah,
thing. So as people are coming back, as like you're starting to engage on a personal level with clients, and this is like something I've been thinking about now, because during the pandemic, we've hired lots of new people. We've gotten, I've had to like rent out a couple remote office spaces. We're all over the place. And I'm thinking about the time where able, some of us have never even been in the same room together. A
yeah,
lot of us haven't, like as we come together, I'm thinking about culture, which is I feel like it's such like a lame sort of thing, sort of like gimmicky sort of thing. But I think about it like how important, like, are you thinking about company culture?
Oh God. I mean, I can't imagine what it's like working for a husband and wife, right? Like we fight like
I think
we're
about the same
married
thing.
because we're married. Like that's
Not about
how
you,
we
but
are.
because I work with my wife, I think about the
Yeah.
same thing. My
w-
my employees, like, not that we're like,
Yeah.
there's anything crazy happening, but like I would
No,
think
like
it. I would think it.
there, and if we don't agree and we're in a staff meeting together, like you better believe that, we're passionate beings. Like we go head to head just like we normally would. Like it doesn't matter that it's in front of an employee or in front of our kids or in privacy of our home. Like sometimes we each get fired up and
Look out! It's happening.
shocker, we don't agree 100% on everything all the time. So
Right.
like, I think that Sarah has definitely gotten used to that mentality. And I think that also Colin and I have dialed it back in the sense that like this comes from a place of a collaborative nature. Like he is the smartest person I know, and Sarah is the other smartest person I know. And like
Mm.
the three of us together, like it's unstoppable. Like the things that she brings to the table are things I've never thought of. The things that Colin helps me think critically about, I never would have thought about it because I'm not a super critical thinker. And like it is a very, very collaborative space. I am very interested to see when we start adding a sales team and a COO and all of the things that we are envisioning for our company going forward, that like
Yep.
this culture we're breeding now is one that is for the common good of creating an inspirational place that people want to go to, that they're excited to be a part of. Like, I don't want to be someone who just yells at everybody all the time. I used to be, and those people don't work with us anymore, and they probably didn't like working at
Right.
EMT. Like, and the other thing too is like culture doesn't just happen overnight. Like trusting your employees'
So important
instincts
to
does
understand that.
not happen overnight. Like I still triple double check certain things, and I'm sure it irritates Sarah, but she knows that because it's my baby. Like she knows, like at some point, I'm sure and hope that she's going to be like, "All right, lady, step off. I got this."
Yeah, yeah,
And,
yeah.
and I mean, like production, for instance, order fulfillment. Like I don't even think about that anymore. Like that used to be, I'd be up to the middle of the morning, filling bottles, capping, labeling, shrinking, filling orders. Like I haven't done that in years. And thank goodness we have Sarah that does that. And now like the way that we create promos and like we're working on scaling and we're working on our GMP, like I never would have been able to do any of that without Sarah. And like her mindset for detail, her mindset for growth, like all of that has a trickle down effect to us and how we take on new customers or take on new retailers or come out with a new product. Like it isn't just me being like, haha, I've got the
I
idea.
did
Like,
it.
yeah, no, it
Yeah.
doesn't work like that. She'd be like, no, I hate that smell, because she's the one who's gonna have to formulate it. So like, it has to be a place of sustainability, like all of this, like
This is a bad
people,
idea, Ashley.
yeah. And then, you need to give me 5 reasons why it is. Okay. Like,
Yeah, last question, and reminding you that this is going to come out probably September-ish.
Okay.
What's next for Elmore Mountain Therapeutics?
I knew you were going to ask me that.
What humongous announcements that will probably already have taken place by the time this comes out can you make here?
Ooh. Uh, we have partnered with a national brand and we will be making all of their CBD products. So that's super exciting. And there's distribution in Canada through that brand. So that's super exciting. Geez. You know, the biggest thing that I'm focusing on right now is back to basics with my customers. I have some really neat ways of creating our community, like outside of Instagram, which is not real, and outside of the website, which is also, you know, not real. It's a snapshot of a moment in time, as is Instagram. And I just wasn't connecting with people the way I wanted to. And I don't think it's really safe to assume that I'm going to all of a sudden be on the like demo circuit and being able to connect with my customers. So it's really important to me to strengthen the people who've been with us for the last 5 years, and then all the hard work that they've done to spread the word to their friends, their family about EMT and why it's so important to use our products. So yeah, this time in September, I'll have completed a pretty substantial shift in community building. It has nothing to do with sales and everything to do with just talking to my customers. And then the other big shift is my kids are going to be going back to school. Like right now, I have been running my business, working literally like 8 hours a week. And like, if you've ever tried to run a company, I've gone from like doing it 100 hours a week to now doing it 8 hours a week. And like, it still is operating. I don't know how it's doing that. Thank you, customers. Thank you, Gaia. But like, yeah, I'm pretty excited that in September, I will actually be able to work on my business, you know, on a reasonable amount that an entrepreneur should be working on their business.
Well, good for you. It's awesome to, like I said, watch clients like you on that spectrum just trudging right ahead. I love seeing it. I appreciate your time so much. Thank you for giving us a little glimpse into the weird things that I think are interesting about starting a business. I appreciate you so much. Ashley Reynolds, co-founder of Elmore Mountain Therapeutics. Tell the people listening where they can find you. We'll link it in the description below.
Yeah, branding 101, kept it simple. Every handle, every social, website, EMT, CBD. Type it in, you'll find us.
You will find them. They're there. Until next time, thank you so much, Ashley.
Thanks, buddy.
See you, folks.